Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money, with your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 280 of Screw the Commute podcast. Today we're going to talk about publicity, how to get it, and what it can do for you. And I hope you didn't miss episode 279. Rebecca Kirstein was part of Raise the Dream Week, and she's very inspirational, a real go-getter. You want to check that out. How would you like to hear your own voice here on Screw the Commute? If the show has helped you out at all in your business or given you ideas to help you start a business, we want to hear about it. Visit screwthecommute.com and look for a little blue sidebar that says Send a Voicemail. Click on it and talk into your phone or computer and tell me how the show's helped you. And also make sure you put your website on there and you'll get a big shout out on a future episode of Screw the Commute. Now grab a copy of our automation ebook. This book has saved me 7.5 million keystrokes. We figured that out a couple years ago, so it's probably more than that. And it helps me take care of customers and prospects lightning fast. And that means more money in your pocket. So grab a copy of that. We sell it for $27, but you get it free for listening to the show at screwthecommute.com/automate free. And while you're over there, grab a copy of our podcast app. It's screwthecommute.com/app, and you can take us with you on the road. It does all kinds of fancy things, and we've got complete training for you so you'll know what to do when you download it. Now, we're still sitting here in the middle of this pandemic, and work from home keywords are still going crazy on Google. People have to learn how to do this. Now, I've been preaching this since 1996. I've been selling on the commercial internet since 1994. And you really need to get these skills, not only for yourself, but any young people in your life, grandchildren, children. It'd be one of the best legacy gifts you could ever give them because they can have a high-paying career really within months. I mean, we have students that are making money a couple months into our school. So you got to check this out seriously and get these skills, and you won't be stuck dependent on somebody else all the time. So check it out at imtcva.org. You can do it distance learning. We hope later this summer to have in-house classes. We'll see how this pandemic goes. And just give me a call and I'll tell you all about a potential future for you or your loved ones on the web. All right, let's get to the main event. Before the internet came along, I built my entire career using publicity. People would hear me on the radio or see me on TV or in print. And I always let it be known I was available to speak every time I was on the air or in print. And even before that, I had my entertainment company. And it took off like crazy after I got in the Washington Times and the Washington Post and Associated Press. But then you have the subject of cold calling. All right, in the speaking business, people told me to make 100 calls, get 10 leads, and close one sale. All right, well, I made one call and quit. Yeah, I know there's people who are great at cold calling and who teach cold calling, and I'm certain it can work, but it's so totally against my philosophy and demeanor. I mean, I think I was ready to throw up after that cold call. My idea is that celebrities don't cold call. And one of my quotes hanging on the wall at my school was that the only way to exceed the average income in your profession is to become better known. Publicity does that for you. So why publicity? Well, for one thing, if you know what you're doing, it's free. You couldn't afford to buy that kind of time on television or radio or in print. Yeah, you can hire a publicist, but a guy I know says the one thing a publicist guarantees you is that they will send you a bill. Also, if you don't know any better, let's say they guarantee you 30 radio interviews. Well, that's pretty easy to do by booking you on crappy stations in Nowheresville where you have 2 listeners and one of them is a cow, okay? So I'm only going to be talking about here publicity that you drum up yourself. And I'm okay with you having an intern or employee help with this, but I'm not suggesting getting a publicist unless you have money to burn. I mean, good ones start at $5,000 a month and can go up to 30 or 40,000. So no, 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 that's not for us. All right, publicity makes you more believable to the public because they think the news or trusted outlet they're seeing you in or on has vetted you. All right, it's kind of like wherever they hear about you is vouching for you. This is not even close to being true, right? But it does make the listening or watching audience believe it's true. And you couldn't find a better example than Michael Avenatti. He was all over TV hundreds of times in a very short period of time. All the while, he was being accused of ripping off his clients. There's even one case against him where he allegedly kept the settlement money that he was supposed to give to a disabled person. Well, we'll see how that case goes, but he's presently been convicted and serving time for extortion. All right, so the reality is that if you play your cards right, any kind of rip-off loser can get publicity. And of course, I'm not advocating that you be a rip-off loser. I'm just saying the bar is pretty low if you want to get some publicity for yourself. All right, publicity can turn into direct sales. If someone sees your unique product or service in a news outlet, you can be sure many people will buy it immediately. And also, publicity, like I said before, can mean a giant increase in your fees. Maybe you remember there were a bunch of reality shows about cosmetic surgery and cosmetic surgeons, mostly Beverly Hills types. Well, those surgeons were probably no better than any other plastic surgeon in Southern California. But by being on TV, people were flying in from all over the world to have their work done by those surgeons and at much higher fees. All right, let's get into it. But before we do, I want to warn you about one facet of publicity and also another reason you really can't trust what you see on many shows. And that's called pay for play. Now, you may have gotten an email saying, oh, you would be perfect for some airline in-flight magazine, and they tell you how many people look at each issue. Well, not really right this moment during the pandemic we're in, but in general, they'll throw out some big numbers of people, and they'll tell you how wonderful and important these people are, and what being in the magazine will do for your credibility, blah, blah, blah. And then they say they only have one slot left at the discounted price of, say, I don't know, $11,000. Okay. See, it's the same with TV. Much of the daytime and morning shows, I suspect even the big network shows, although they probably would never admit it, much of it is pay for play. I was just on a show with some legitimate news, but the guy on before me had a foundation company. There was no news to his segment at all. He just paid to be on there. And maybe it was worth it to him, and maybe he had money to burn, but I virtually never participate in such a thing. It's far better to create real news and be newsworthy so you get on for free. And you're even more credible because you are providing real value to the readers, viewers, and listeners. Now, a good place to start is HARO. That stands for Help a Reporter Out, HARO. They send you an email every day with journalists looking for comments on all kinds of topics. Now, they do break it down to categories so that you can look at it each day much faster. For instance, I probably wouldn't be looking at the spiritual section. I hone right in on the business section and sometimes lifestyle section because I'm all about lifestyle businesses. Now, in the beginning, if I were you, I'd entirely look through each issue for a couple weeks to see all the kinds of stuff they look for and then narrow it down later when you see where your time is best spent. I've got some pretty good media hits from HARO. All right, so now let's break things down into formats for publicity. I'll talk about radio, podcast, TV, print, and live. Let's start with radio. See, radio is good because you pretty much have captive listeners. You have people driving in cars not screwing the commute. They're listening for long periods of time, and this brings up an important point about people going to work and coming home, which is called drive time, and it's from about 7 to 9 in the morning, and from 4 to 6 in the evening on weekdays. So if you're talking to a radio producer and they say, well, they have an 8 a.m. slot and a 10 a.m. slot available, you do everything you can to take the 8 a.m. slot. And I don't care what time zone they're in. Take the 8 a.m. slot in their time zone, even if it means you have to get up at 4:30 a.m. to be on at 5 a.m. your time. You will probably have 3 times as many listeners than you would at the 10 a.m. slot. Also, right at the beginning of your interview, expand your audience. I learned this from the great media trainer, Joel Roberts. And let me tell you a story about my Wake 'em Up Business Presentations book. So I was going through his media training, and he said, okay, I'll be the interviewer, and you go ahead and start pitching your Wake 'em Up book. And so he said to me, so Mr. Antion, tell me about your Wake 'em Up Business Presentations book. And I start rattling off, oh, it's great if you want to get raises and this and that and the other. He says, stop. He says, you just cut out all the mothers and the grandparents and everybody else that's not in business. So we switched places, and he said, I'll pretend to be you. And so I said to him, Joel, I said, Joel, tell me about your Wake 'em Up Business Presentations book. And he said, oh, it's way more than a business presentations book. If you have kids in school or college or grandchildren and anybody that needs to be a good communicator so they can get a great career, or if you are in business, this book is great. Right? So right there, folks, is a multi-million-dollar point for you. Right there, and I got it from Joel Roberts. I expanded the audience right off the bat. See, where Joel used to be a talk show host, one ratings point could mean $1 million to the station. So if he brings on a dud of a guest that keeps the audience real narrow, he wants to get you off of there as soon as possible. But if you show him right off the bat, you just tripled his audience size, he's going to keep you on much longer because you're acting like a pro and you know what you're doing. That's just one of the tips there. So expand your audience right off the bat. So try to listen to the show on other days prior to your interview. Maybe you have to listen on their website if they're located in a different city than you're in. Pay attention to when the breaks are and help tease them if you can. See, a tease is some juicy thing you're going to tell them after the break to get them to hang onto the station and not change channels and come back after the break. You might say something like, I know we have a break coming up. If you have a pencil handy, when we get back, I'm going to tell you the greatest secret on earth. We know whatever it is that suits your topic. So the host is going to say, oh my God, I got a great pro on here because you're doing this. They already think you're a pro for expanding your audience, which all leads to repeat appearances. When they see your name, oh, he or she was great. Have them back. You say, I've been on some shows 13 times. Okay, so this is really powerful. So next, you can provide a list of sample questions about your topic. And like every media coach tells you this, all right? But what they don't tell you is to put the amount of time it takes for you to answer. So let's say the host knows they have a hard commercial break in 60 seconds. And you have a question that takes 15 seconds to ask and 40 seconds to answer. The host can easily pick that question, and again, they're going to think you are a super pro and probably have you back. All right, podcasts are really taking off and have been for the last couple years. Listenership has exceeded XM satellite radio. New cars can play podcasts right from their dashboards, and in-home devices like Amazon's Echo and Google Home represent more than 150 million homes that can play podcasts just by asking them. Now, it's great to have your own podcast for publicity, and we'll have other episodes about that, but it's also great for you to be on other people's podcasts. And the nice thing about podcasts from a publicity standpoint is that they last a long time. A year from now, someone may listen to you on someone else's or your podcast. It's also much easier to get on podcasts because there are so many of them. There are podcast booking agencies, which I would say are a little better than a publicist, but you still might get booked on a lot of little shows that you could have easily booked yourself. I have a couple episodes talking to podcast booking agencies. I don't remember the numbers. Look back through our list at screwthecommute.com if you want to hear about podcast booking agencies. Anyway, you can do giveaways on other people's podcasts to build your list, and I always give the host an affiliate commission if someone buys something because of my appearance on their show. I even have a page just for podcast hosts to show them what I'll do for their show and how they can make money from my appearance. And I'll put a link to it in the show notes at screwthecommute.com/podcast hosts. Now, you should have a page like this to impress podcast hosts so they want to book you on their show, and you can have the same one for radio. Now, move on to TV. That's a different animal. The great media trainer Starley Murray demands that you make your appearance on TV visual in some way. Don't be just a talking head. You can provide graphics, B-roll, and B-roll is that a video that plays while you're talking that illustrates what you're talking about. Again, having this available makes you look like a pro. Some stations will use the graphics and B-roll and some won't, but offering it makes you look very professional, like you're an old hand at this. Now, you could make it visual with props and even with what you wear, like Matt Lesko, the guy who always wears a suit with question marks all over it. Now, you'll need makeup for TV whether you are a guy or a girl, and you want to be careful not to wear any distracting clothes. No jangly jewelry that will make noise and reflect light. No close patterns on your clothes or pinstripes that make weird shimmering patterns on TV. Starley also says take a picture of yourself from the side to see what you look like. You will be seen from the side by the cameras because you're talking to the host. Make sure they can see your eyes and that your perfectly fitted suit doesn't pull all over the place because they put 2 transmitter packs on your belt or skirt for the microphones. Nowadays, with this pandemic, that side stuff isn't as critical, but you do need to set up a nice background get a good webcam. And here's a really big tip. Look at the webcam. Don't look at the picture of the host on your screen. At the very least, move the host's picture as high as you can, just under your webcam. If you don't force yourself to look right into your webcam, the viewer will see a very odd picture of you looking just slightly away from the camera that makes you look shady or a liar or just weird. Also, always sit forward in a hardback chair. Trust me, you will look way better on TV that way. Now, TV isn't nearly as good as radio for promoting your stuff. Now, radio people will say your website and usually promote the heck out of you, but not so with TV unless it's pay for play, and even then they won't push you very much. Also, it's really a pain in the neck to do TV. You have to go there, except now during the pandemic you don't, but you got to get dressed up, look great, and you could easily get bumped if some breaking news happens. If I have to do a New York appearance, it pretty much costs me $1,000 to get there, get a cheap room, cost me 2 days out of the office. I got to get around town and eat, and it's just, it's a lot of work, so it better be worth it. And you got to remember, you could get bumped for breaking news. Now, if you do get on TV, be darn careful at the station. There are wires and other things that trip on and knock over all over the set. Now, you don't want your first appearance on TV to be you tripping and knocking over the weather person. All right, now let's talk about print. There aren't as many outlets for actual printed publications as there used to be. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. Most of the print publications have either gone completely online or have an online version. This means tremendous opportunity for you. Let's say you get something into the Wall Street Journal online, but you don't make it into the print version. You can still say, totally legitimately, you were in the Wall Street Journal. Also, the online version will stay up there way longer than a one-time appearance in the paper version. And the space limitations aren't really critical in the online version. Also, you can get a clickable link, which will get you way more traffic than if you were just in a printed version and someone had to go to their device and type in your link address. Now, let me take a sidebar here. Do not, and I emphasize, do not fall prey to the fraudulent technique that scammers are pushing for you to advertise or comment in a publication and then claim you were in the publication. Lots of times these scammers encourage you to put the logos of the publications on your site with something like Seen in the LA Times or Chicago Tribune and the like. This is fraudulent. You are trying to convince the general public that you were featured in those publications, and you were not. You just advertised or commented like anyone could do. And you're a piece of garbage if you do what I just described, and I hope the Federal Trade Commission sues you. All right, back to print. And I'm just going to call it print and online together since they're melded, pretty much together nowadays. One thing that will help you out tremendously is to know in advance what the publication you're targeting plans to cover in a certain issue. Virtually all of them put out an editorial calendar. This is a tool that they use to sell ads related to the content of a particular issue. And it's also good for you so you know when to pitch them. Let's say you had a public speaking product or technique and you were approaching a leadership publication. Well, you see from the editorial calendar, they will be covering communication skills in their November issue, and that submissions have to be 4 months in advance of the publication date. That means your article needs to be a done deal in July, and you should have been approaching them well before that with a query letter, which I'll cover in a minute. Now, what I discussed with the 4 months lead time is more traditional print publications and could be more accelerated in today's atmosphere. I just don't want you to wait until the last minute and then wonder why no one is responding. All right, query letters. Well, many publications that accept contributions don't want your entire article until they know they want it. If you look hard enough, you can find a particular publication's submission guidelines. Some will want your entire article and some will not. The ones that don't will usually say something like, queries should be sent to, and then wherever they tell you to do it. Just do what they tell you. Also, there's plenty of online resources for telling you how to write a query letter, so Google that. Now, to have the best chance of success, mention how your article fits into their communication issue. And right there, you're telling them that you know what you're doing because you didn't pitch your public speaking article in their hiring issue, for instance. Also, pay attention to word count. If you look at their back issues and all their articles are about 500 words with one picture, and you pitch them a 1,500-word article with 8 pictures, you just shot yourself in the foot. Now, here's one way around that. You could pitch a 3-part series with each part being around 500 words with one graphic. That'd be cool. Okay, here's a sidebar about sidebars. If you can't get a full article accepted in a print publication, you may be able to get a sidebar accepted. This might be a simple 7 steps on something that's in a little box on the side of the page. You still get credit in the sidebar, and you still can legitimately claim that you were in the publication. All right, now before we get into the last really cool method to get publicity, I have a complete ebook on the subject called How to Be a Kick-Butt Publicity Hound. I've been on radio and TV all over the world, and this ebook tells you how you can do it too. I collaborated with Joan Stewart. She's known as the Publicity Hound, who included an even bigger perspective that will work for just about anyone who wants free publicity. Now, you can get a free excerpt and a table of contents by just stopping by the show notes for this is episode 280, and we'll have a link there for you. All right, let's get into our last topic, live publicity. One time, I was just in the audience at an event and the seminar leader mentioned that I was there, and I sold $20,000 worth of mentorships and I didn't even speak. So if you can contribute to a live event, and when I say live now, it might be an actual live event or a virtual live event like a Facebook Live. You might get mentioned, or you might be asked to contribute a comment, which establishes you as an expert, and some of the entire credibility of the event rubs off on you. You can even get publicity from your clients and students if you have them. Whenever I see one of my students has a live event, I pop in and they invariably say something like, "Wow, I'm honored one of my main mentors is here. Thanks, Tom, for stopping in." Hey, if I'm not too busy, many times they ask me to comment, which again puts me in front of people who may never have heard of me. And if someone hires me, of course I give my student a commission on the sale. Now, another thing you can do is be part of panels, which again gets your name and credentials out in front of lots of people, and you don't even have to work up an entire speech. So go out there and get some publicity. It can have enormous benefits for your business and turn you into a celebrity. And what do they say? You can be a celebrity in your own mind. Not really. You can be a real celebrity in your niche. So get that free excerpt to my Publicity ebook and get your name out there. I'll catch y'all in the next episode. See you later.